With this video I am going to experiment with the razor blade candy voice. Anyway, this is part 2 of the Why the Men's Rights Movement is Complete Crap series I plan on doing. Anyway, Herbert Purdy did a speech for the International Conference on Men's Issues 2016. This is my reply video to this speech. This nut job is associated with a voice for men. There it is. It is absolutely clear that Herbert Purdy is associated with Mike Buchanan's Justice for Men and Boys Party, and A Voice for Men. I am sure AVFM will just go. We are just listening to all sides of the debate. Do you want the men's human rights movement to be an echo chamber, for everyone to agree with you? You are pro-censorship, and just like the feminists, blah blah blah. Gentlemen, bear in mind AVFM ban MGTOWs from commenting on their site. So AVFM are being disingenuous when they use that argument. They are using free speech concern trolling to spread their traditionalist agenda, while using censorship themselves. Anyway, let's get on with the video.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a deep honor to be invited to speak to you today, and I think this particular slot that I've been asked to speak at is appropriate, and in some senses I'll be reiterating much what Erin was speaking before, but she hasn't stolen my thunder. In fact, I propose to make that thunder roar and roll a great deal further. It's almost half a century since women's liberationists first took to the streets chanting, "Women demand equality, and I'm a second-class citizen." And the feminist narrative of the historically victimized woman needing to strive heroically for her rights in a male-dominated society is a theme that has been burnt into our social consciousness. The entire paradigm is so politically charged, so politically correct, that no politician of any hue would dare have an all-male cabinet, any more than a large company would even contemplate having an all-male board of directors. And this is causing women to be pushed, promoted, and inserted into every walk of life simply because they're women. Moral panics about rape and violence against women and girls are rife, and a plethora of women's help agencies exist to meet the demand for the perceived women's aid. Many of them are funded by central government, with ring-fenced budgets, as Erin pointed out.
Well, men need the same. We need men's health spending with ring-fenced budgets. Men need to start demanding shit. We are men, we are worth it after all, right?
And they feed a constant stream of propaganda about men as potential rapists or wife-beaters to the press. And most of it is patently untrue. But like all propaganda, it is effective in embedding these false social narratives, which in a feedback loop justifies their existence and secures their funding, of course. Our universities are hotbeds of gender politics, where free speech is all but closed down, not least because of the strident demand of millennial women students that they must not have their feelings hurt or be made to feel unsafe. And in response, many universities are actually providing safe spaces for women students, free from their male counterparts. Such is the degree to which this hysteria is gripping our campuses.
Tradcon men offer women safe spaces in their relationships with women. They want to coddle them and protect them. Society offering women safe spaces in universities is something that naturally arises from a society that worships women. If people grow up seeing women as a protected and pampered caste of human beings in their social life, they will carry on reinforcing those roles once they get into positions of power. A society having female-only safe spaces is the logical conclusion of a society that has a culture of chivalrous paternalism. How can tradcon men complain about women being coddled when they want to coddle women with their protector-provider gender roles? A lot of these men are only complaining because women use the state as their protector, not the fact women are getting extra protection and privileges over men.
The alleged pay gap is constantly being promoted by feminist-dominated think tanks, by politicians, and even heads of state, such as Barack Obama, who couches his message in terms of women only earning 77 cents for every dollar a man earns. Others say women are being forced to work effectively for nothing from the 9th of November until the end of the year. And this is always portrayed as discrimination, despite the fact that an average woman in her lifetime will undoubtedly earn less than an average man simply because she's likely to have children.
Pay attention to that. He is assuming motherhood as being sacred right there. Men have children too, right? How is women having children a reason for women to work less than men? That mindset is the thinking that leads to men getting discriminated in family court. If a woman has a child, there is a father that helped her conceive the child. He can help with the child rearing, and work less hours, and she can work more hours when the father helps with the child rearing. It is that simple. Anything else places more burdens on men, gives lazy women an excuse to opt out of work, and alienates fathers from their children, because fathers end up working more than women. Therefore they spend less time, and women have a bigger role in raising children and influencing society. Also, women work less than men outside of having children. Plenty of men lacking in self-respect bribe women to live with them in relationships, providing for them, giving women more flexibility, life choices that men lack. Men are their own worst enemies. Already the traditionalism is starting to creep in this guy's speech. It is only going to get worse.
Which causes her to take career breaks and then make work-life balance decisions.
So why can't fathers make those same work-life balance decisions?
However, feminist campaigners will not allow these explanations, insisting that women are being actively discriminated against. Even inadvertent slips of the tongue about women are instantly met with a storm of hysterical protest from female MPs, from women's advocacy groups, and women in the media who allege sexism and misogyny with an alacrity that seems to know no bounds of reasonable behavior. Character assassination and premature career termination, even of highly eminent people like Sir Tim Hunt, for example, await anyone foolhardy enough to speak truth to the power in the land that feminism has now become. And
feminists get these men fired, because the feminist women complaining live in a traditionalist society. The traditionalist mindset sees men as disposable, a society that is okay with men working and sacrificing their quality of life for women, a society that is okay with letting men rot on the streets, while the state makes extra sure women do not end up in the same situation. Are you really surprised that even high-status men end up getting discarded and disposed of? This has been happening to low-status men for years. I have talked to men fired from their jobs on the whims of their female co-workers. Right-wing men haven't given a shit about this problem affecting men for years. Society is only starting to notice the problem when high-status males are affected. Perhaps if society gave a shit about low-status men, it would have noticed this problem earlier, and taken corrective measures. The tradcon state loves to punish and control men, even without feminists to incite them into action. There are issues affecting men outside of feminism. Feminism is an important issue to tackle, but the obsession with it derails from other important issues.
This has created such a climate of fear that it has closed down rational social discourse about women's changing role in society as effectively as any totalitarian regime has done in the past. Kevin Alfred Strom once said, "To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize." However, I'm doing just that. I want to try to bring clarity and truth to what is happening to our society under this deeply divisive totalitarian ideology which, like a wrecking ball, is tearing us apart and dividing us along a fault line called gender. My principal thesis is that despite feminism claiming as its credentials the liberal Enlightenment ideals of freedom and equality of opportunity, it is a masquerade beneath which lies a much darker agenda, one that is being worked out by an ideologically driven elite.
It's social engineering. What an interesting conspiracy theory. Please tell me who is behind this secret plot to divide men and women. Is it the Jews? The Illuminati? The cultural Marxists, shape-shifting alien lizards? The Masons? The Rockefellers? The Democrat Party? Spectre? The LGBT with their homosexual white genocide agenda,
which is anathema to everything Western democracies stand for. In 1970, Germaine Greer said this: "Women's revolution is necessarily situationist. We cannot argue that all will be well when the socialists have succeeded in abolishing private property and restoring public ownership of the means of production. We cannot wait that long. Women's liberation, if it abolishes the patriarchal family, will abolish a necessary substructure of the authoritarian state, and once that withers away, Marx will have come true willy-nilly."
Now the derailment begins. Now Herbert Purdy is going to make his speech all about anti-communism. Some feminists are communists. So what? In their actions, feminists are not communist-like at all. Feminists protect female bourgeoisie privileges. Also, Germaine Greer is an insane feminist. She is calling the bourgeoisie nuclear family setup patriarchal, when it is in fact a family setup revolved around worship of motherhood, and devaluation of fatherhood. Feminists say all sorts of insane things. It doesn't mean it has any significance. In fact, right-wing mental defects are scapegoating when they blame the destruction of the nuclear family on a communist plot. Family structures adapt and change to the economic and social environment. It is capitalism that has smashed the extended family. Out of the rubble arose the nuclear family, and now the nuclear family is fading away. Most of the social engineering going on is done by tredcons. No-fault divorce, without abolishing alimony and child support. Tradcons seem obsessed with enforcing protector and provider gender roles on men, and giving guardianship of the family unit to women, therefore giving women a bigger say in raising kids and shaping society. To me it seems like right-wingers waffling on about social engineering conspiracy theories are just projecting their own traits.
So let's get on with it. Influenced by academics such as Greer, who have colonized our campuses, turning them into virtual madrasas of radical feminist theory, a small but influential cadre of highly politically motivated former women's liberationists has succeeded to a remarkable degree in implementing what she was expressing. For more than 40 years, through politics, the media, and other key social institutions, these ideologically driven women, and it has to be said, men of the same persuasion, have been at work behind the scenes, gaining control of the levers of social and political power, and inexorably changing social policy, the law, and ordinary people's lives to conform us all to their dogma. Greer unequivocally located feminism in the Marxist milieu.
Please tell us about Marxism and why it is so evil. Let's knock this men's rights shit on the head. We got to fight against the evil communists first.
And it is a fact that most of the early women's liberation movers and shakers embedded their theories there too. In the 1848 Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, in rhetoric dripping with mocking sarcasm, openly stated that the aim of the communists was to abolish the bourgeois institution of the family. This is what they said. It's there for anyone to read. Abolition of the family. Even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family? The bourgeois family? On capital, on private gain.
Say what you will about Marx and Engels, but that statement is absolutely correct. Economics is the basis of the family unit. Tradcon men want to bribe women into relationships with provision, but they object to this simple truth being pointed out. Marx and Engels were manginers, so their analysis on gender dynamics is very wonky and highly flawed. Still, when someone is correct, they are correct. Anyway, this old fart is clearly derailing. Perhaps Herbert Purdy went to the wrong conference by mistake? Perhaps he thought he was at a meeting of the World Anti-Communist League.
In its completely developed form, this family exists only among the bourgeoisie. But this state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians. They also declared war on marriage.
Marx and Engels, the original men going their own way. Better knock off this MGTOW shit alongside men's rights activism. Let's instead focus on the Reds under the bed. Please tell me more about how evil communism is.
So bourgeois, according to them. Mockingly mimicking the alleged bourgeois, saying, "But you communists would introduce a community of women," screams bourgeoisie in chorus. Nothing is more ridiculous, they say, than the virtuous indignation of our bourgeois at the community of women which, they pretend, is to be openly and officially established by the communists. The communists have no need to introduce community of women. It has existed almost from time immemorial. At the most, what the communists might possibly be reproached with is that they desire to introduce, in substitution for a hypocritically concealed, an openly legalized community of women.
I do not get the point of this. Is Herbert Purdy objecting to free love? If Marx and Engels promoted that, then that is not a men's rights issue.
And their approach to children and parenting must not go unremarked either. Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents, they say? To this crime we plead guilty. But you say we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social. The communists have not invented the intervention of society in education. They do but seek to alter the character of that intervention and to rescue education from the influence of the ruling class. So this is what society looks like after 45 years of feminism.
That is a non sequitur. You just read a bit of the Communist Manifesto, and then you went. This is what society looks like after 40 years of feminism. What the fuck does one statement have to do with the other? Talk about obsessive. Everything leads back to Marxism with you right-wing mental defects. What the fuck are you even doing in the men's rights community?
Marriage, once the committed union for life of a man and woman, and the key institution that guaranteed social stability, has been deconstructed, redefined, and all but destroyed.
Good. Fuck marriage. It needs abolishing. Also, marriage was not the key to social stability. Plenty of stable civilizations have existed without marriage being common. In fact, legal state marriage was not a common practice in the West. It was not enforced except by social convention. Concern about protecting the sanctity of marriage is not just derailing from men's rights issues. It is also deeply antithetical to the concept of men's rights. And talking about marriage in a men's rights conference is an hostile act of co-option.
Almost half of marriages will end in divorce, typically after only 11.4 years. 3 times as many women as men initiate divorce. Marriage has been replaced by a legally uncommitted union of 2 equal partners, just like in the communist proletariat.
This statement is pure fucking nonsense. Purdy claims marriage has been replaced by an equal committed union of 2 partners? Is he totally oblivious to the legal imbalances in the marriage contract, or is he being dishonest? Who can tell? He of course claims that marriage is now equal, so he can somehow link it to communism. Purdy doesn't let reality get in the way of a good anti-communist narrative. A man who gets divorced, giving half or more of his assets to his lazy ex-housewife. A man who loses custody of the kids, who is forced to pay child support, is not in an equal situation.
In which technically illegitimate children are being born wholesale, and which has an even worse prognosis of lasting than marriage does. The social role of the mother has been changed. Once the bearer and nurturer of young children until their emerging viability as teens.
What fucking nonsense is this? So men didn't nurture their children in the past? So the extended family didn't play a role in child rearing before the rise of the nuclear family? Purdy has the same tradcon mindset as the men who passed the tender years doctrine into law. He believes motherhood is sacred. The logical conclusion of that mindset is stay-at-home housewives and alienated fathers who do all the work. In fact, he is advocating for gender roles that emerged after early industrialization broke up the extended family. Again, he is blaming feminism for something that capitalism has caused.
Women, cajoled into being able to have it all and to lean in, now combine career with childbearing and upbringing, attempting to reconcile an impossible set of roles, and often
an impossible set of roles. Only if the father is alienated from his family, if both parents share work and child rearing equally, there is nothing impossible about mothers working and having children. Again, this is the men's rights movement, not the anti-communist league, or the mothers' advocacy movement. Again, Purdy assumes motherhood is sacred, and is making assumptions based off that.
Unable to give their best to any of them, least of all to their children. The ready provision of maternity leave and the increasing provision of childcare allowances from state funding is manoeuvring mothers into leaving their children's upbringing in their most crucial formative years to strangers. Politically correct childminders, operating in what amount to state-funded nurseries, are taking over the role of shaping and forming our future generations according to broader societal values rather than the values of their own parents. And this is what totalitarian states do.
No, this is what all modern developed nation states do. In fact, child rearing has always been shared. It was just done by the extended family in the past. The daycare system is just a replacement for that. So far, Purdy hasn't raised any men's rights issues. Perhaps if we keep our fingers crossed it will happen.
Under successive interventions from governments of all political hues, women have been co-opted into the means of economic production. They have been turned into wage slaves, just like men have always been.
Hey, I thought the concept of wage slavery was Marxist. So men being wage slaves is cool, but when it happens to women it is a tragedy.
And they emulate precisely the women in socialist communist states. In fact, women are now working harder for less. As figures released by the ONS show, although they are roughly half the workforce, they still only contribute about 28% of all income tax, compared to men's 72%. Women en masse are being used as working drones.
What? This old fart just contradicted himself. So women work far less than men, but are being used as worker drones? Is he that gone in the head?
Most of them are earning pittances, while their privileged sisters argue about the glass ceiling, the pay gap, and women's representation in the boardroom. Elite feminists with their social agendas have even reworked the idea of what constitutes a normal family. For example, Harriet Harman, as far back as 1990, in a report which she co-authored with Patricia Hewitt, another prominent Labour feminist, said, "It cannot be assumed that men are bound to be an asset to family life, or that the presence of fathers in families is necessarily a means to social cohesion."
Yet the right-wing tradcons are the ones that set up the system that awards child custody to women, and make men pay child support. Harriet Harman was just stating de facto reality. When she made that statement, fathers had already been alienated from their kids by the right-wing UK tradcon state. I am sorry, but the party that has been in power in the UK the vast majority of the time since the Second World War, is the right-wing Conservative Party. I suppose if Purdy was pressed on that point, he would claim Marxist elites control the Conservative Party.
Excuse me? This is utter nonsense, but it is now widely accepted dogma, particularly amongst the political classes. You see, the process is simple. If you remove the interdependence of men and women, you will destroy the institution of lifelong marriage as one flesh.
Interdependence is just a right-wing euphemism for profitable. Marriage is less profitable for women now, so less women get married. Less men can afford to get married, or are willing to pay the price of marriage. If men and women were interdependent, they would naturally bond with each other regardless of the economic climate. This old fart is tacitly admitting that men have to bribe women to be with them.
If you destroy that, then the fall of the patriarchal family will automatically follow. Then the way is clear for a new social order to be constructed. In this case, cultural communism.
Sergeant, check the kitchen. You look in the back. I'll be upstairs. Hey!
What is this? Where do you think you're going?
We have no time for explanations. Already we are 15 minutes behind schedule.
I don't care who sent your why. You're not going to take another step until I see your warrant.
Warrant? We need no warrant. As a member of the Young Communist League, your daughter has volunteered for farm work. She's to be transported immediately. The truck is waiting outside.
You say my daughter volunteered?
That is correct. Here's the signature. Requesting transport to the People's Collective.
Signature on that piece of paper is false. And everything you've said is a lie because my daughter would never leave here of her own free will.
Sergeant!
You've got no right to be in this house. I'm going to give you just 10 seconds to get out of here.
Daddy? It's true, Daddy. I did volunteer for farm work.
Linda, why?
The party convinced me that I should free myself of the lingering bourgeois influence of family life. I am ready. Do not interfere. It is for my own good.
And Comrade Donovan, do not think that your deviationist remarks shall be overlooked. They will be reported to the proper authorities.
And that is precisely what the women's liberationists and their fellow travelers and acolytes, now called third-wave feminists, continue to seek in what is undoubtedly a sustained campaign to bring about permanent social change. There's more. Marx argued that the very essence of the relationship between men and women was between the strong and the weak, and that the natural dichotomy between the sexes was the same as the dichotomy between the bourgeois and the proletarian, and therefore part of the class struggle.
I would agree with Marx. He just got the dynamics of who was oppressing who back to front. Men are emotionally weak and submissive to women. They work and slave for them, and women, just like bourgeoisie capitalists, leech off surplus male labor. Men are truly the proletariat. Again, Herbert Purdy is just waffling on about how evil communism is.
This is the true nature of the fight between women and men that is rampaging through our society today, from Parliament to the breakfast table. The openly legalized community of women has come about.
So you are again objecting to free love? You know free love wasn't caused by legal change, but by birth control? There was no laws stopping women from sleeping around. Straight people in the past could freely fuck. It was just more risky due to STDs being untreatable, and birth control being less reliable. Women started sleeping around more, because most of the risks involved were taken away by the development of technology. This is not a men's rights issue. Old farts who have hang-ups about female sexuality should fuck off.
People might think that's a good thing. Whatever. It's undoubtedly one of the core principles of communism. And we see that in action today in Cuba, in Vietnam, in North Korea, and in our own societies through feminism. Friedrich Engels argued, without a shred of real evidence incidentally, that women had been a separate social group from time immemorial, claiming that...
Wrong. I consider Engels an mangina, but his book On the Origin of the Family used the latest anthropological studies of the time, and he had a good knowledge of history. So Purdy is just making a baseless bare assertion about Engels not having evidence. Women are a distinct social group, Tradcon's advocate for gender roles that make this so the fact Purdy is objecting to Engels saying this after he has advocated for stay-at-home mothers is laughable. Purdy is a rambling nut job who is all over the place. I have read Engels' book. Like most paranoid anti-communist mental defects, I highly doubt Purdy has read any original works by Marx and Engels.
But in early hunter-gatherer societies, they only shared possessions, resources, responsibilities, work, income, and decision-making with men on a non-hierarchical, loosely bonded, sexually uncommitted basis, and that the children they bore were the responsibility of the community, not their biological parents. Does this resonate with you, perhaps, about our current society? Even if what Engels said was true, does that not tell us that we have regressed, not progressed? Do we want to be a hunter-gatherer society? This precocious, morally corrupt, unmarried and very wealthy young man, the frock-coated communist as Engels has been called, a cotton mill owner by inheritance and still in his 20s, declared marriage to be a morally corrupt, singularly bourgeois institution that subjugated women. He called it a conjugal partnership of leaden boredom known as domestic bliss. And all of this returned in the 1950s in Betty Friedan's seminal book, The Feminine Mystique, which is required reading on university gender studies courses across the world. According to a list published by the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, in the US alone there are 777 out of an estimated 2,600 colleges and universities, that's around 30%, offering every level of study in gender and women's issues, from university certificates to full doctorates. In the UK, there are 34 universities and higher education institutions out of an estimated 280. That's about 36%, near enough the same proportion, doing the same. And interestingly, of the 333 universities and Grande École in France, only 5 offer a gender studies course. That's 0.3%. And one of those is the American University in Paris. You know, maybe the French have a far better understanding of égalité than the rest of us. More crucially, in his later book, The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State, Engels said this: "The overthrow of mother right was the world historic defeat of the female sex. The man took command in the home also. The woman was degraded and reduced to servitude. She became the slave of his lust and a mere instrument for the production of children."
Engels is sounding a lot like a Tradcon right there. In fact, Tradcons use almost exactly the same sort of terminology, but just mostly against Muslim men. Both the left and right are full of woman-worshipping manginas who are anti-male. Both groups are willing to paint rival groups of men as oppressive predatory threats to innocent helpless women. It is strange that so much time is taken up in this speech to talk about Marx and Engels. It is almost like Purdy doesn't give a fuck about men at all. No wait, it is exactly like that.
In order to make certain of the wife's fidelity and therefore the paternity of his children, she is delivered over unconditionally into the power of the husband. If he kills her, he is only exercising his rights. Have we heard this before? In the feminist-driven domestic violence agenda, perhaps? Engels advocated what he called sex love. As he put it, a virtual model of sexual relations between men and women, arguing that there was no point in marriage without love, and that men and women should only marry for mutual affection, not for social security, property, or social betterment. Yet all these things have been for centuries and remain, if the truth be known, the underpinning rationale of marriage. Both ways, incidentally. He also said that if sex love was to die or become supplanted by a new passionate love, separation is a benefit for both partners as well as society, and the contract should be able to be terminated painlessly without the couple having to wade through the useless mire of divorce proceedings.
If that means men do not have to pay alimony or child support after divorce, I am all for that. Of course, just getting rid of marriage is the easiest and simplest solution. This speech has been complete crap so far. dribble about Marxism, complaints about women being forced to work, whining about free love and freedom of association. The old fuck birdie wants men and women to be trapped in loveless marriages. He is in fact an authoritarian. He is an authoritarian derailing the men's rights movement. He is spitting in the face of men and boys who need their issues talked about. He is wasting valuable conference time so he can obsessively derail with his right-wing garbage.
Well, I think at least he got that last point right. These were outlandish ideas in the mid-19th century, but they found their resonance after the Second World War in the so-called swinging 60s, when no-fault divorce was introduced both in Britain and in the US, in our case enacted by a Marxist Labour government under Harold Wilson, and it ripped up the traditional social contract between men and women, unleashing a tidal wave of divorce.
I am sorry, but to call any former British Prime Minister a Marxist is deranged. Purdy is truly obsessive. I honestly think he is mentally ill. Harold Wilson was the Prime Minister behind the decriminalization of homosexuality. I wonder, was this under the orders of his communist overlords? You know, because homosexuality was all the rage in the USSR and is an integral part of Marxism. In case you didn't realize I was being sarcastic, as homosexuality was never decriminalized in the Soviet Union. Harold Wilson was also strongly in favor of a strong Anglo-American alliance. I highly doubt a committed Marxist would be pro-American. I suppose Harold Wilson abolished the censorship of plays in British theatres on the orders of his secret Soviet masters too. Because the USSR was a free speech utopia paradise, and Harold wanted to emulate the Russians in that regard. Purdy, like a lot of right-wing farts, is conflating liberalism with Marxism. He doesn't like liberalism, so he smears it as communist. Also, isn't it strange that Purdy went out of his way to mention that no-fault divorce was passed by a left-wing Labour government in the UK, but fails to mention the fact that Republican Governor Ronald Reagan was the first one to introduce no-fault divorce in the USA. Obsessive right-wing nut jobs will erase any part the right plays in gynocentrism, or cooperating with feminism. They will instead place all the blame on the left, as it is their favorite scapegoat. This is intentionally dishonest, and another reason why I do not deal or debate right-wing nut jobs. They are spreading disinformation and confusing people's understanding of gender issues. I consider the right the primary enablers of feminism and misandry. The left has played a large part too, but the right spends all its time smearing the left, accusing it of being behind everything that is anti-male.
Combined with other factors, not least the pill, and abortion virtually on demand, and an abrupt end to prosperity due to a seismic shift in our economy from a manufacturing base to a service one.
Okay, who was behind the running down of the manufacturing industry in the UK? Let me give you a clue. It is someone that Purdy is going to praise later on in the speech.
A perfect storm was created in which the Marxist revolution that was women's liberation seized its moment to foment the gender class war in which we are all now embroiled. I know, because I was there. I lived through it all. I'm an eyewitness. It was my generation that was in the vanguard of all of this. What is the most effective way to bring about a revolution? Perform a coup d'etat. You take out the head of state. What is the best way to revolutionize the family? Do the same to its head, the father. That is the true meaning of the feminists' attack on what they call patriarchy, which literally means the rule or authority of the father.
If there ever was a patriarchy in the West, it certainly hasn't been around since the start of the Industrial Revolution. Purdy, being a retard tradcon, seems to be under the delusion that a breadwinner father for a nuclear family is in charge. This is of course utter bullshit. As having to slave and work to provide for dependents is not the definition of being in charge. Using that logic, the servants who serve a king are in charge, not the king.
Feminists hate patriarchy. Everything they do is designed to overthrow it. And why? Well, Germaine Greer spelled it out. To destroy the family, the necessary substructure of the authoritarian state. She was just echoing what many of the movers and shakers in the early women's liberation movement were also saying. And there's another reason. A surprising number of them had relationship issues with their fathers, not least Greer, or with men. And they made the personal political.
Just like you? You are making your personal obsessions with Marxism and female sexuality political. You should be booted out of the men's rights movement. Sadly, A Voice for Men is TradCon Central, so they will of course welcome you with open arms.
Thus patriarchy as the rule of the father morphs into the social power of men, which justifies the feminists' obsession with it today. It is also the case that a surprising proportion of them were lesbians. That's not a judgment on them, it's a simple statement of fact. They didn't like men or maleness, especially when they saw it standing in social authority over them. And that is why Marxism was the perfect ideological basis for their uprising.
This is Purdy's logic broken down. Lesbians equal Marxism because of reasons. Talk about a non sequitur. If you play a drinking game and take a shot of alcohol every time he says the word Marxism or Marxist, you will end up in an alcohol-induced coma. Hey, I am still waiting for a men's rights concern to be brought up.
What these women wanted was to wrest overarching political social power from men, and they wanted a return to Engels' mother right, a matriarchate, one in which inheritance passes down through the mother's line, not through the father's.
Well, women have got something just as good as that, thanks to the right-wing tradcons who passed the tender years doctrine. All the other goodies women win in divorce or relationship breakups are the logical extension of the tender years doctrine and right-wing worship of motherhood. Women have divorce, ownership of the family unit, and even common law marriage.
One in which women effectively rule everything, and around whom everything revolves. And that is what we see today unfolding before us. Feminists in power are now overseeing the systematic removal of fatherhood from our society, not least through the power of the family courts, in which feminist ideology, disguised as political correctness of course, works.
I am sorry, I have to call bullshit on this dribble. Political correctness has nothing to do with the family court, or the eviction of fathers from the family. This is just a disrespectful right-wing fucker obsessively derailing. This is how right-wing nutjobs derail anti-feminism. They will link anti-feminism to things like Marxism, or political correctness and steer the conversation towards those topics. This is another reason I do not like the term social justice warrior, as that is a label used by the right to steer the discourse from anti-feminism to anti-leftism.
Like a virus in its operating system. Every day in Britain and the developed nations across the world, draconian decisions about fathers' access to their children are being made that serve only to eliminate fathers from their children's lives, replacing them with a new dad, or more likely, no dad. In the weasel-worded rhetoric of doing what is best for the child, children are being cut off from their fathers and their fathers' families, often for good. Their natural inheritance through their father's line being dispensed with by a state apparatus that stands all too ready to step in and fulfill the role of the father whenever it becomes necessary. And the damage this is doing to children is before us all, hidden in plain sight. According to Sir Paul Coleridge, retired senior judge of the Family Courts Division, a third of all British children are currently caught up in the family justice system. That amounts to approximately 3.8 million. A figure that is uncomfortably close to the 3.2 million children who are judged to be living in poverty by the United Kingdom Department for Work and Pensions. This is the outworking of the new one-parent matriarchies. Children are being passed like parcels, often between warring ex-spouses, both of whom are pursuing their individual careers, their care and upbringing being parceled out to whomever has the time or the inclination to care for them. Mothers who are invariably granted custody of children are routinely flaunting access granted to fathers, and judges turn blind eyes to it, sitting on their hands when it comes to enforcing their own orders.
Most judges are white knight old farts like you. They believe in sacred motherhood, that it is presumed and that mothers are in charge. You do as well, since you believe in stay-at-home mothers, and wage slave fathers.
Hundreds of thousands of children now live in so-called blended families, often thrust against their wills into a jumble of step-parents, half-brothers and sisters, and assorted non-blood relatives, and all too often permanently deprived of their natural kin on their father's side. But here's the kicker. Approximately 1/5 of those children caught up in this mess will lose all contact with their fathers for good, according to Nat Sen, the research group funded by the government's Economic and Social Research Council. And that figure has been put at around 1/3 by Mish Kondareya, a leading family law specialist here in London. That represents between 130,000 and 213,000 fathers at any given time. None of us should be in any doubt that a human tragedy of gigantic proportions is being worked out before our very eyes because of our acceptance of feminism and our obsession with so-called women's rights, and neither should we be in any doubt about what is behind it. You see, when the nuclear family ceases to be the primary unit of society, when marriage between heterosexual couples ceases to have any meaning, when men are excised from their rightful place as the head of the nuclear family.
Fathers were never head of the nuclear family, certainly not since the passage of the Tender Years Doctrine. Fathers were head of the household of the extended family, but the lead mother also held a strong position of authority over the rest of the family as well. Purdy is of course too stupid to realize that the nuclear family is a historical aberration, and here he is waffling on about how it is the natural foundation of civilization. It is funny that stupid tradcons fail to realize the difference between the nuclear family and the extended family that preceded it.
When women are not committed to one man or to his support for his children, when home life becomes redefined to a broader, boundaryless concept, when women rely on the state as their support, when childcare is subsidized by the state.
Childcare is subsidized by the state because the traditional extended family support networks are gone. It is in fact the rise of the nuclear family that led to the state intervening in family life more. The state in fact stepped in because many families were in poverty and dysfunctional. Many men didn't earn a big enough wage to support their families. Nuclear families are subsidized almost as much as single-parent families. The family model that Purdy obsessives about needs propping up artificially by the government, and it is clear he wants government force to stop couples breaking up. Purdy whines about state intervention. Yet how will the state stop people divorcing or women sleeping around? Purdy advocates for a family model that is based on state subsidy and intervention. It is clear that Purdy doesn't even understand what the nuclear family really is. Look, unless people are willing to form clans and live in extended families again, most families are going to need some form of subsidy. The problem is women are the gatekeepers of the family unit, all the subsidies go to them, and the state kicks fathers away and forces them into provide a gender role against their will. The way the state subsidizes families is dysfunctional and in fact an attempt to keep the nuclear family gender roles applied on men and women after breakup.
When people are hired to do the job of childcare whilst mothers work, when the legal legitimacy of children has no meaning, when the right of the child to have access to its natural father or even know his identity is dispensed with, then the ideas of Marx and Engels have found their social expression.
Of course!
And so too have the ideas of Greer.
Of course!
And Millett.
Of course!
And Firestone.
Of course!
And Dworkin and Solanus and 100 other women's liberation agitators.
Of course!
As well as those of Harman, Hewitt and their fellow travellers in government today.
Back to Marxism again. Linking feminism to Marxism again too. The problems men face have nothing to do with Marxism. The tradcon state has pushed fathers out of the lives of their children, they have forced men to pay for this privilege. The tradcon state has worshipped and coddled mothers, and then right-wing nut jobs blame this on Marxism.
When these things happen, a different form of society comes into being, one where the state becomes society, and socialism, or even Tony Blair's socialism.
Tony Blair was right-wing and a Thatcherite. Why bring Tony Blair up?
Becomes its dominant ethos. And this is precisely what Margaret Thatcher warned us against when she said, there is no such thing as society, there are individual men and women, and there are families.
Anyone who quotes that and thinks Thatcher took her own words seriously is an idiot. Thatcher believed in a big strong state, she just believed in giving poor people nothing, and used her neoconservative neoliberal ideology as a pretext to give poor people nothing. She was a foul hypocrite, and only right-wing mental defects worship her.
And no government can do anything except through people, and people must look to themselves first. It's our duty to look after ourselves, and then look after our neighbour. Mrs. Thatcher adamantly resisted the extension of state funding for childcare after having visited the USSR and having been desperately saddened to see little children being dropped off at nurseries by their mothers who were being forced to go out to work. She froze child benefit as part of her war against the welfare state, and she criticised working mothers for raising a creche generation. Yet all these things are now a reality in Britain.
The problem is not welfare and benefits. This is more right-wing dribble and derailment. The problem is the fact mothers are the gatekeeper of the family, and the welfare goes to mothers, thus setting mothers up in a position of power over the family unit. The father is considered second-rate, and has no rights. In fact, the whole right-wing meme about welfare allowing mothers to discard fathers is a distraction. The right-wingers want to abolish welfare, and want poor men to starve to death, so they will use this as an entry point to worm their anti-welfare statism in. Of course, the fact women get most of the welfare, and that the welfare they get is to subsidize lazy female gender roles is a problem. Let me assure you that the right only wants to get rid of welfare for poor men though. Right-wingers are selective in their anti-welfare statism. Any poor woman will be seen as a victim of a man who is a deadbeat who didn't fulfill his traditional responsibilities, so the right will still support welfare for women. It is the fact fathers can be kicked from their kids, denied access and forced to pay, that is the problem. Mothers as the gatekeepers of the family unit has to go. Anyway, Margaret Thatcher is the one who introduced the modern child support agency in the UK. She introduced an agency that incentivized mothers to kick fathers away even more, and devalued fatherhood even more. All Margaret Thatcher's talk about family values is just hypocritical empty platitudes.
Britain, just 3 years after her death. She also said, the feminists hate me, don't they? And I don't blame them, for I hate feminism. It is poison. Yeah. She well knew that what they were up to, and she held the line for over a decade, but feminism...
Thatcher held the line against feminism for over a decade? How about nope? Thatcher hated low-status men, and attacked them when breaking the miners' strike. What did Thatcher do to reverse female affirmative action laws? What did Thatcher do to give fathers rights? Thatcher talked about making fathers take responsibility for their children, but let me assure you, under Thatcher's government, mothers could just abandon their children on a whim. She in fact attacked fathers with the child support agency she founded. She in fact attacked fathers and men when she destroyed the Northern English economy. She used her neoliberal ideology as a pretext to not invest in the economy, but she was more than willing to subsidize the military-industrial complex. Here is a speech Margaret Thatcher gave at the Pankhurst lecture to the 300 group. Thatcher gave this speech on the 18th of July 1990. I will link to the speech in the description.
Maintenance. Government too must be concerned to see parents accept responsibility for their children. For even though marriages may break down, parenthood is for life. Legislation can't make irresponsible parents responsible. but it can and must ensure that absent parents pay maintenance for their children, for it is not fair for them to expect other families to foot their bills too. At present, only 1 in 3 children entitled to receive maintenance actually benefit from regular payments, and 3/4 of lone parents have to rely on Social Security. Earlier this year I announced that we were looking at ways to stop absent parents just walking away from their duty to maintain their children. We have been examining the policy and practice of other countries, and we have decided that we must have a simpler system of maintenance available to all. The present one is too inconsistent, too slow and too complicated. In future, we will set up a new child support agency which will for 5 have access to the information necessary to trace absent parents and to make them accept their financial obligation. We will move to assessing maintenance through a standard administrative formula which will take account of the parent's ability to pay, of the cost of bringing up a child, and the right of that child to share in their parents' rising living standards. Complicated cases may still have to be referred to the courts, but the existence of such a formula will help in these cases too. These proposals will help lone parents, who are often overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the task of making absent parents face up to their responsibilities. The whole process will be easier, more consistent and fairer. Our aim is to give the lone parent back her morale and her confidence. Then she will be able the better to use and develop her own abilities for the benefit of her children and herself. She can then break out of the cycle of loneliness. We will publish the full details of these proposals in a white paper this autumn.
Finally burst upon Britain under Tony Blair, who raised it to be the ism above all isms. I remember Paul saying once that feminists lie about rape. They lie about the pay gap. They lie about domestic violence. They lie about families. And they lie about fathers. They lie about history. And they bully, threaten, and hound anyone who speaks against their lies. Across the entire political spectrum, they have altered our politics and our law. They have commandeered our criminal justice system, conforming it to their political correctness so that it enforces their laws, and they now have unreasonable power in our land.
No feminists asked the anti-male right-wing tradcon police state to pass anti-male laws, and the right-wing police state was more than happy to oblige. The right and feminists are allies.
This alien ideology, driven by ideologues in government and in the institutions, is selling us a pup under the guise of fairness and equality for women. Even conservative politicians declare themselves to be followers of this deeply divisive creed. Theresa May, for example, the current British Home Secretary, and a conservative, allegedly, and very probably the next British Prime Minister, is not ashamed to be photographed wearing a shirt bearing the slogan, "This is what a feminist looks like."
Because right-wing politicians are anti-male, and are the de facto enablers of feminism.
Now all we need is Hillary in the White House in November, and we'll have the full set.
God help us.
Indeed. Be in no doubt, the old battle between conservatism, small c, and socialism, small s, with some liberalism thrown into the mix, is now passé. We are witnessing a shift to a new gender-based politics whose driving ideology is socialist feminism.
There is no such thing as socialist feminism. What pure dribble. Any state that favors one demographic over another and widens the gap between them is not socialist by any definition. Right-wingers conflate state intervention with socialism. This is a nonsense definition, as that means everything is socialist. What we have is capitalist feminism. Feminism is an ideology that can only exist in a tradcon capitalist state. Stop scapegoating the problems of capitalism and traditionalism on bogeymen.
It is cutting across the old political alliances, and it's undoubtedly the New Deal here in Britain, as it is in the Scandinavian countries of Europe, in Canada, and the battle is raging currently in Australia. It will become so in the US if Clinton isn't stopped by Trump.
More right versus left derailment bullshit. Trump is going to do nothing for men if elected. He is a woman worshipper. The right in the USA are deeply anti-male. They brought in child support enforcement and started the anti-male drug war. Purdy is just a right-wing politics advocate pretending to be a men's rights advocate. Again, the right loves to erase the part the right wing plays in enabling female supremacy. I am about done now. I am sick of this old fart waffling on about Marxism. AVFM is a fucking joke. This speech given at the conference is a fucking joke. Purdy did not even touch on any men's rights issues. He just waffled on about Marxism, women being oppressed by work, and women sleeping around. He then praised the deeply anti-male Margaret Thatcher and called Harold Wilson a communist. AFVM clearly doesn't give a fuck about men. They want to save marriage and stop communists taking over the West. The right is hostile to men's rights. One of the reasons the men's rights movement has never taken off is because of its right-wing origins. Anyway, more videos to come on this subject.